Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us today is Father James Mulford, publisher of the Zenit News Agency, the largest Catholic news agency in the world, with more than 1 million subscribers in 166 countries. They publish daily in 7 languages. And Father, welcome to Newsmax TV.
It's good to be back, Kathleen.
Well, you're on your way back to Rome after covering the Pope's trip, World Youth Day trip. How would you sum up that trip? It was pretty amazing.
Well, I tell people that we spent a week with 3.5 million close friends. There were young people, college age, I'd say from 18 to 25 mainly, from over 190 countries. There were 6,600 journalists accredited. And Pope Francis made it a point to say that this was going to be his only trip in the year 2013. So it was, you might say, his coming out party for the world, and he didn't let us down.
Mm-hmm. And right now, one of the issues that he's looking at is the violence and the unrest in Egypt. Pope Francis called for peace there and condemned the violence in the name of faith. He said, quote, "Faith and violence are incompatible." Is there a sense that the church feels that there's this rise of Islamic fundamentalism that threatens Catholics and Christians across the Middle East? How big of a concern is this for the church?
Well, it's a major concern. It's a major concern, and Pope Francis and the Catholic Church always has been in favor of religious freedom. We just published an article, I believe yesterday. I think the original was in Arabic. We have an Arabic edition, and it's been translated into other editions, other languages. But it was an interview with one of the, I believe, the patriarchs in Egypt, and he made the point to say that this is not a Christian-Muslim conflict. He said even if you take a look at the churches, not only there were Christian, Catholic Christian, Coptics, Protestant churches that were burnt or that were desecrated, you might say, that they were concentrated into 2 or 3 cities. And he mentioned that these were the cities where the most fanatical groups are found. So he tried to make it a point that this isn't a Christian-Muslim conflict. So he's saying it's more a political power play, and that because the Christian groups represent in some of these fanatical groups' eyes the West, that's the main reason why they're being attacked.
It's been reported that since the start of the military crackdown in Egypt, that as many as 58 Christian churches were damaged or destroyed by Islamists. Now, the Catholic Church in Egypt released a statement stating support for government institutions, including the military. Does the church there then support the crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood?
That I know of, I think there was no mention of that. You know, I think precisely.
But even tacitly?
Well, no. I mean, in the sense that, you know, the reality is this, is that in any country, anything that happens in the public sphere is entangled. You know, here even more so. We Americans are used to, you know, the division of government, and you have the military, and you have the different parts of government. In the Middle East and other countries, it's not that clear cut, and you know, it would be long to go back and to look, and particularly about Egypt. I'm thinking Syria. I'm thinking other hot spots in the Middle East. The Catholic Church, and I would say the Christians in general, they're not behind a regime. They'll never come out and say, you know, we're in favor. They're in favor of freedom. They're in favor of democracy. They're in favor of human rights. That's what the Church and the Christians are always going to speak out of. Not condemning one particular group, or not not backing another.
Mm-hmm. Now, Pope John Paul II played a critical role in helping to end the Cold War. Do you see Pope Francis taking a similar stand in the war against terrorism?
Well, you know, times change, and also there, I think when you mentioned Cold War, it's a generic term, but I think that there were very concrete, specific countries. He was from Poland, which was, you know, had a big influence from other, you know, outside countries. So there was a very concrete thing that they focused on in the Reagan administration, etc. The factors here, I think, are a little bit more fuzzy, if you will. It's not as clear cut as we would like. So I'll just repeat what I said before. You know, it's not so much that, you know, let's not wait for Pope Francis, or I think anyone for that matter, to come out and to back a regime, or to say that they're in favor, either to back or to condemn. The Church, the Christians will always stand up, and I'm sure Pope Francis right now if you look at what he's saying day by day in his audiences and in his speeches, he's upholding principles, values, virtues. He's not any particular regimes.
And Pope Francis seeks to reform the church. He's now 4 months into his papacy, and he's come out saying that he believes that women should have a greater role in the church, that gays shouldn't be judged. He's encouraged young people to shake things up. Is he living up to, is he proving to be this reformer that everybody expected him to be?
Well, I would just say 2 things, Kathleen. First of all, what we're talking 4 months, maybe 5 months, since he's become a pope. It's kind of hard, to judge someone. I think he's being very prudent in the sense that there are many things that need to be revised, need to be looked at inside the Catholic Church in particular, and he's doing that. But he's not rushing, to any conclusions. I've been out of Rome for a couple months now. I was down in Brazil helping to prepare the World Youth Day, but. He's listening to a lot of people. The people in the Vatican that I know, my friends that work there, they're saying that he has an open ear. That anyone, that's one of the reasons that he doesn't live in the Apostolic Palace like many of the popes before him. He lives in, some people call it a hotel. It's more a residence, but he has breakfast, lunch, and dinner with hundreds of people, and literally anyone can come up to him and have his ear and say something to him. He's very open to that. The second thing is, these are my words, not his, but when he was in Rio, he spoke to different groups, and I'm paraphrasing and using my own word, but he was basically saying, well, I'm just the Pope, and one of the things you said about shaking things up, he had a meeting with about 40,000 Argentinian young people. He's from Argentina. Nevertheless, he didn't stop by Argentina on his way to Brazil. So he had a special meeting with them in the cathedral in Rio de Janeiro. And he said in Spanish, what does the Pope expect from you, from the young people in the Catholic Church? And he said one word, and in Spanish it's Leo, L-I-O, which might be a mess. He said to make a mess, to shake things up. And basically he was saying, don't wait for the Pope to come out and change everything. He said that's not going to happen. But you young people, the people in the pews, you're the ones, he said, kind of tongue-in-cheek, looking out of the corner of his eyes, he said, shake up the priests and shake up the bishops and shake up the cardinals, make us come to you and make us be more dynamic. And he said in the first talk that he gave before he was elected Pope, he said that he's saying it's, I can't think of the word in English. He's saying that basta is in Spanish or Italian. He said, we've been looking at our own internal problems too long. Someone translated as saying navel gazing. So we've been, he said, as cardinals and as the institutional church, yes, we have things that we need to straighten out in our own house. He said, but Christ called us to evangelize the world, to be witness. So, and I think that was very clear in Rio de Janeiro with the young people, and he knew that there was an international audience listening to him. That let's not worry, let's clean up our own house, the things that we need to change, if whatever's needed to change. But especially, let's not forget that we were called to be witnesses to the world of Jesus Christ.
And some in the media have likened him to a rock star. How do you see Catholics responding to him, and do you think he'll be able to bring even more Catholics into the fold?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned, use the word rock star, because being in Rio de Janeiro for the last couple of years, they have a big event called Rock in Rio, and they've been bringing a lot of events there. And we interviewed a waiter at one of the restaurants on Copacabana Beach, and he said they also have a very big New Year's Eve celebration with over 1 million people right there on the beach. And he said, I've been to a dozen these huge rock concerts. I think Rod Stewart was there not long ago, and he said, I've never seen anything like this. He said this was completely different. And I think, I was thinking about this, and I think one of the big differences is when you have a rock star, that person, whether it be a man or a woman, they're the center of attention. It's more to promote themselves. It's a self-promotion. Whereas the Pope went to Brazil not to promote his image, not to to stand out and to be the center of attention. On the contrary, he went there to visit the Brazilians. He went, and he said it in many of his talks. He said, I came to visit you. And just one token that shows that the Pope-mobile, that Mercedes-Benz gave him a new Pope-mobile in Rome, and they put it in an airplane, flew it down to Rio, and it had bulletproof glass all around it. But before they put it on the plane, he went and looked at it, and he said, get rid of all that. He said, and literally, the three of the walls of the glass, he called it a cage. He took them down, and some people, especially the security people, when they landed in Rio, the car was swarmed by people, and they were reaching in and touching him and shaking his hand, and the security were just they were kind of going crazy. But he said, I've come to visit my family. He's not a rock star, and he doesn't pretend to be one.
Now, some have suggested that the Pope was actually endorsing gay clergy when he came out saying that gays shouldn't be judged, that they shouldn't be marginalized. Was he endorsing gay clergy with that statement? Well,
I think you represented it very well. I mean, you said what he said. He said they shouldn't be judged. I mean, the Pope improvised a press conference that wasn't going to be held. It wasn't on the program when he was coming back from Rio to Rome. Everyone was tired, exhausted, and he was in the front. And he's a man. He's 76 years old, but he has an energy that doesn't seem to go away. I was not on the plane, but some of my journalist friends were there, and I've spoken to them on the phone and by Skype since then, and they said that they were just kind of sitting around, and all of a sudden they were told prepare for the Pope. He opened the door, walked in, and it was about an hour and a half. Probably the longest press conference that any Pope has ever given in history. And he said, ask me whatever you want. And they looked at each other and said, really? And I mean, they're not going to be, the questions aren't going to be filtered or anything. He said, no. And they asked him about gays. They asked him about the Vatican. And really, I think the question was about, some people have said that there's a gay lobby in the Vatican. And he said, well, I can tell you that I haven't seen on anybody's Vatican ID, that they're a member of the gay lobby. He made the comment that you said. He said that no one should be judged externally. I mean, that's for God and their own conscience. He never spoke about gay clergy. He never, endorsed anything. He said that we should live and judge people with compassion. There's no change in Catholic doctrine in that sense. The Catholic Church has always, had an outreach for every category of human existence that you can imagine. And the Pope continued that. I think what caught people's eyes was the word compassion. That this Pope from Argentina was born, raised, and lived in a social setting where he has seen many injustices, and he's very sensitive to that. And he's been, in many of his talks, and even in Rio de Janeiro with the young people, he said, let's not forget that Christ was also compassionate, and that we should be compassionate with everyone.
As you're aware, the Catholic bishops have filed a lawsuit against President Obama, the Obama administration, over the Obamacare contraception mandate. How can Pope Francis make a difference when it comes to religious freedom, especially here in the U.S.?
Well, it's a complex issue, as you well know. I mean, I live in Europe. I've been out of the U.S. for a number of years now, and I would defer to the local bishops here in the United States, because it is a complex issue. There's so many things involved, and not only the Catholic bishops. I mean, other individual groups. I mean, I know of Catholic businesses and Catholic and non-Catholic Christians, but simply and others who have absolutely no denomination, but they don't agree with some of the things that are being imposed. Again, we go back. You're asking me about Pope Francis and the Catholic Church. It has never been the role of the Catholic Church throughout history to weigh in on individual laws or mandates. Except, and I'm saying, unless I'm thinking, unless you're talking about something that would be to promote communism or Marxism, or something that would be to eradicate the basic democratic principles. I think that there are lawmakers, there are members of the church, whether they be clergy, whether they be bishops, cardinals, and also lay people, who are fighting that fight. I don't think, it's not something that Pope Francis is going to intervene directly and give his personal opinion. As I said, the Catholic Church forever, for the last 200 centuries, has always been trying to illuminate consciences. And I think it's the role, that's the role of politicians. And what is a politician? Or who is a politician? A politician is a man or a woman who lives in the public sphere, the politics. The police is the society. So I think to wait for a sign, or to wait for a document, or to wait for something to come directly from the institutional church is not the correct thing to do. If you're a Christian, if you're a Catholic, if you're someone who upholds liberty, I won't even say religious liberty is one of those liberties, then become active. That is the message of Pope Francis. Do what you should be doing in whatever role you're involved.
Last question for you, Father. When Barack Obama took office, he received a lot of support from Catholic bishops. How would you gauge their support right now for the president, and what support do you think he has from the Holy See?
You'd have to ask them. I just found out a few days ago about the new ambassador to the Holy See that was named. I understand just rumors. I mean, I don't have confirmation, but I understand that there were a number of names that were suggested to the Vatican, and some of them, they weren't looked upon in a favorable way. What do the bishops in the Vatican think of the Obama administration? You'd have to ask them. I'm not a bishop. I have my hands full.
I thought you had the inside scoop.
Well, I have my hands full with publishing 7 languages a day, in around the world. But more than anything, what we try to do in our news agency, we don't belong to the Vatican. We're not financed by the Vatican. We're completely independent. Most of what we cover is about Catholic issues, and also I'd say human issues, family, faith, education, those sort of things, life issues. But what we always try to do is not so much to give our personal opinion, but to ask the people who are involved in these debates what do they stand up for? So, I really, it's not that I want to avoid answering the question. I really think that, every bishop, every individual, they have their own, they have their own stance on it. And really, it comes down to, as I said, it's a very complex situation. And we're watching it unfold before our eyes. I mean, I wish I could be more precise, but it's something that as each individual situation from a political standpoint evolves, then those individuals, I think it's not a matter of the institutional church or Pope Francis, to give his personal opinion on every article of every law that's passed, but to help people have guidelines so that with their conscience they can understand what the situation is and react accordingly.
Father James Mulford of the Zenit News Agency, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's been a pleasure. And if you're ever in Rome, look us up.
Absolutely, I will.
God
Thank
bless.
you, Father.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.